Welcome to First and Main, the City of Winston-Salem's podcast about the staff and the programs that serve the Twin Cities residents each and every day. I'm your hostess with the mostest, Brandii Little. Today, I'm joined by Isabel Coletti from Planning and Development, who works on the Historical Resource Commission and runs the city's Historical Marker Program. You've seen those cast iron signs around town? Well, the program behind them has an amazing history, and each one of those markers has its own fascinating story to tell. So stick around. We're about to get into it. All right. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Isabel Coletti about a few of the planning and development programs, including the city's Historical Marker Program. Isabel, welcome to First and Main.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
I'm glad you're happy to be here, girl. It's going to be fun. So, Isabel, can you tell me a little bit about what your job is with the city?
So I mostly work in the planning department on the historic preservation side of things. Planning itself does zoning, long-range planning, and they do a lot of public art, but they also do historic preservation, which is where me and my coworker, Michelle, come in.
Okay. So, Isabel, can you tell us a little bit about the Historic Resource Commission and the Heritage Neighborhood Program?
Yeah, so the Historic Resource Commission is the board that I'm on with Michelle McCullough at the staff level. We have 12 other members. They are head of the Recognition Committee and the Community Engagement Committee that oversees projects such as the Heritage Neighborhood Program. Okay. The Heritage Neighborhood Program is to make sure that we recognize neighborhoods that aren't on the National Register of Historic Places or aren't designated as a local historic district, to make sure that, every neighborhood that contributed to Winston-Salem is recognized for, either cultural significance, historical significance, people maybe that were important in that community. We currently made prototypes for signs to put on intersections, and we are currently working on the application to make it a little easier, and we'll be accepting new applications next year.
So the Historical Marker Program, I understand it has an interesting history of its own, and a certain individual is behind it all. Can you tell us about it and who started it?
So it was started by former Councilwoman Joycelyn Johnson, who represented the East Ward from 1993 to 2009. Unfortunately, she did pass away in 2022. But she wanted to make sure that more hidden histories, things you don't see in your textbook, or you always hear about the Reynolds and the Haynes, who are, important to the city, but making sure that smaller communities and, more hidden histories were recognized.
Cool beans. Is there anything that your organization is looking for in particularly right now?
So we have, a lot of hidden histories and some bigger histories, but we are lacking a lot of locations or sites or organizations that are associated with women's history or Native American histories. So if anyone has sites or locations or organizations that represent women's or Native American histories or culture, we'd be super grateful if you could send in an application.
That's awesome. So where do they go to do that?
So you can find the application on the HRC or Forsyth County Historic Resource Commission website, and then you go on to the Historic Recognition Committee, and that will give you forms and kind of a little blurb about the historic marker. But for research, our library is fantastic. Yeah. It has a lot of newspaper archives. You can also access ancestry.com, which gives you census data. In my past research projects, sifting through newspaper articles has been the most helpful.
Now, let me ask you this. What are some markers around town that might give our viewers, our listeners, a sense of this program? Any markers offhand that would kind of get them a good introduction to this?
So when I started, we had the unveiling for the Happy Hill Cemetery.
Wow, you were a part of that?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. So we already had a marker for the Happy Hill neighborhood. That area was originally a plantation for the doctor for the Moravians. Moravians didn't want him on their land, so they gave him that other land because he owned slaves, and the Moravians weren't about that.
I know history a little bit.
But they really needed a doctor. So once after the Civil War, a lot of the freed people kind of planted their roots there and started a community. I believe, that was like 1870s. Yeah, 1870s is when the community started. And from like 1890 to 1960s, they started using the cemetery there.
Okay.
And there's about like 1,500 graves, but only 115 markers left.
Yeah, I noticed that. The markers are not, there are identifiable graves, but everybody don't have a marker.
So I think, it doesn't make up for the fact, but the historic marker really, helped recognize that, we still remember them and we still remember the community and the founding people of our community. And it gives a little history about it because, it has been overlooked with urban renewal and with the construction of housing. They knocked down a lot of markers. And so this way we can remember, that the cemetery is still there and it still needs protecting.
That's great. Well, I read that the program focuses on lost and hidden histories, like you just mentioned. What are the criteria for that? And like, how do listeners know if their idea may qualify for, a historical marker?
We have like 5 main criteria that you have to meet. And then we kind of have some like bonus criteria that will help you get selected. We only select 2 a year.
Okay.
But I know the major 5 is that it has to be in a public right of way and it has to be seen by the public, and it has to be a location that is not already marked. We want to really emphasize places that aren't like usually recognized. Another one is that like, would a marker be appropriate for this site? And it has to be a like location, building, site, demolished building, or an organization that we're representing.
Ooh, sounds kind of heavy. Well, it's probably something that most people can get a part of, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of buildings in just the downtown area that have had organizations that we had some sororities and fraternities that, made scholarships for the area. Like the Office for like Safe Bus, which was helped transport African Americans to their jobs in the city.
Understood. Okay. That's all right. So how about this? The unveilings are like big events for the communities. Can you speak about it? Any upcoming unveilings and say a word about, the effect that they have on our residents?
So about the upcoming, we are still waiting on 2 signs that got approved to be made. We ship it out to Ohio to be made. And they make the iron signs that we see here. That's been the best place that we have found so far to make these signs. They make beautiful signs. Wow. And so it takes a while. So the 2 we have waiting are Sidestown and the Patterson Avenue YMCA. The Patterson Avenue YMCA was an African-American YMCA that was started in the 1920s. And Sidestown was an early African-American community near Bethania.
Yep. Go ahead, girl. Go ahead.
And so we could have marker unveilings by the end of the year, but, it's uncertain until it's made. We have to double check that everything's written all right on the sign, or else they have to completely remake it, which makes us feel so bad.
What happens?
But I know for the Happy Hill, that was a huge success. It really brought the community together. People were just coming home from work and seeing that, their community was gathered, their neighborhood, and they used it as a place to talk about neighborhood issues, upcoming events, and really address their neighbors about, the struggles they've been through. And it went way beyond just the unveiling and just became, an event for the people there.
See, after us having this conversation, I'm sure a bunch of the residents that will be interested in these type of things. So what is like the deadline to apply, or should I say, how can people get started on the process?
So the deadline is coming up October 31st.
Ooh, happy Halloween.
If you don't get it in this year, there's always the next year. And if you don't get selected this year or the next year, you can just keep applying until you wear us down.
That's crazy. Well, listen, Isabel, I want to thank you for coming out today. You swam through this interview, girl. You really did. These are great programs for our listening audience and our viewers as well. If you want to learn more about these programs or have a place that you think deserves a marker, go on and check out our show notes for the links to help you get started. Before you click away, don't forget to subscribe, so that you can always get an alert every time we drop a new episode. You can find us on YouTube through cityofws.org or your favorite podcast platforms. Remember, when you search us, look for First and Main Winston-Salem. So until next time, I'm Brandii Little, reminding you that when we work together, Winston-Salem thrives.